In the shadow of Los Angeles's glittering skyline, an elderly man sits on a bench, his weathered hands trembling slightly as they grip a tattered sports magazine. The cover features a young Magic Johnson, beaming with the confidence that defined an era of basketball excellence. The old man's eyes linger on the image, a faint smile crossing his face before he tucks the magazine carefully into his only bag, a bag that contains everything he now owns. Few passers-by would recognize him. Fewer still would believe that this man once paced the sidelines of NBA arenas, his voice cutting through the roar of thousands as he guided one of basketball's greatest talents. But life has a way of writing chapters we never anticipate. It was a Tuesday morning like any other when Jack Thompson woke up beneath the 6th Street Bridge. 3 years had passed since he lost his home, 5 since his coaching career had fizzled out, and nearly 2 decades since his brief but impactful time working with a young Irvin Magic Johnson. The story of how a respected basketball coach ended up homeless isn't as uncommon as we might think. Sometimes, life's trajectory can change with devastating swiftness. Jack had enjoyed modest success in his coaching career, never reaching the heights of NBA head coach, but earning respect as an assistant and skills developer with a keen eye for untapped potential. It was this talent that had brought him into Magic Johnson's orbit for 2 formative years before Magic's meteoric rise to superstardom. During those early days, Jack had seen something special in the young player, not just athletic brilliance, but a mind that understood the game on a different level. "He was always smarter than me," Jack would tell anyone who recognized him during his better days. "I was just there to help him believe it." But basketball's fortunes are fickle. As Magic's star ascended, Jack's career followed a more meandering path. Assistant coaching positions came and went. A brief, promising stint with a college program ended with budget cuts. Then came the personal struggles, a difficult divorce, mounting medical bills from an uninsured surgery, and the slow, grinding erosion of financial stability that can happen when one setback follows another. On this particular morning, Jack brushed off his clothes and prepared for his daily routine. A visit to the public library to use the computers, followed by a stop at the downtown Mission for their lunch program. The library had become his sanctuary, a place where he could escape the reality of his situation for a few hours each day. Sometimes he would look up old games, watching grainy YouTube footage of teams he once helped coach. Other times, he would simply read, losing himself in stories that took him far from the streets of LA. As he approached the library steps that morning, something caught his eye, a promotional poster for a charity basketball event happening that weekend. And there, prominently featured, was the familiar smile of Magic Johnson. The poster announced that the basketball legend would be making an appearance to support a youth sports initiative in the very neighborhood where Jack now struggled to survive. For several long minutes, Jack stood motionless before the poster, 1,000 memories flooding back. The practices, the late-night strategy sessions, the moment he first told the young player that he could become the greatest point guard the game had ever seen. Would Magic even remember him now? And more importantly, would he want to be reminded of Jack in his current state? Pride is a powerful force, and for those who have fallen from heights of respect and accomplishment, it can be the final possession they cling to when all else is gone. Jack turned away from the poster, his shoulders hunched against a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the weather. No, he decided, some bridges are better left uncrossed. But as he walked away, a young library assistant who had noticed his interest in the poster called out to him. "They're giving away free tickets to volunteers who help set up the event," she said, her voice kind but casual, unaware of the complex emotions her words were stirring. "They need people tomorrow morning if you're interested." Jack paused, his back still to the young woman. In that moment of hesitation hung the weight of lost dignity, of fear, and of a small, persistent spark that somehow had not been extinguished by years of hardship. "Where do they need people?" he asked finally, his voice rough from disuse. The address she gave him was for a community center just 10 blocks away, a walkable distance even for his aging legs. Jack nodded his thanks and continued into the library, his mind now churning with possibilities he had deliberately avoided considering for years. That night, as he settled into his usual hidden corner beneath the bridge, Jack removed the magazine from his bag once more. The cover was worn thin along the crease where he had opened and closed it countless times over the years. Magic's young face looked back at him, frozen in time, unaware of the journey that lay ahead for either of them. "What would you think of me now, Irvin?" Jack whispered to the silent image. Sleep came fitfully that night, his dreams filled with the squeak of sneakers on polished hardwood and the rhythmic thump of basketballs. In these dreams, he was standing once again in a gym, clipboard in hand, watching a lanky young player execute a perfect no-look pass. The dreams were so vivid, he could smell the leather of the balls, feel the vibration of the floor beneath his feet. Morning came too quickly, gray light filtering through the concrete above him. For the first time in months, Jack felt a sense of purpose as he carefully folded his blanket and stored it in his hiding place. He washed his face in a public restroom, attempting to make himself presentable. His clothes were worn but clean. He had always been meticulously careful about maintaining whatever dignity he could manage in his circumstances. With each step toward the community center, doubt crept in. What if they turned him away? What if someone recognized him? What if, worst of all, he came face to face with Magic and saw pity in the eyes of his former protege? As the community center came into view, Jack nearly turned back twice, but something kept him moving forward. Perhaps the same instinct that had once helped him identify potential in young athletes, now recognizing a crucial moment in his own life. A small group had already gathered outside the building, mostly young volunteers in matching t-shirts, their energy and enthusiasm a stark contrast to Jack's hesitant approach. An older woman with a clipboard was directing people, her efficient manner suggesting she was in charge of organizing the volunteers. Jack approached slowly, his heart pounding with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. The woman looked up, her expression neutral as she assessed him. "I heard you needed help setting up," he said simply. She nodded, asking no questions about his appearance or circumstances, merely handing him a volunteer t-shirt and pointing him toward a group unloading basketballs and equipment from a van. And so, on that unremarkable morning, Jack Thompson took his first step back toward a world he had long since abandoned. He couldn't have known then how this simple decision, this moment of courage in the face of shame and doubt, would set in motion a chain of events that would transform not only his life, but the lives of countless others. Sometimes, the most profound journeys begin with the smallest of steps. For Jack, it was simply showing up, accepting a volunteer t-shirt, and stepping through the doors of a community center on a morning when it would have been far easier to remain invisible. The community center buzzed with activity as volunteers transformed the worn gymnasium into something special. Basketball hoops were being checked, floors swept, and decorative banners hung from the rafters. Despite his years away from such environments, Jack found himself falling into a familiar rhythm. His hands remembered the feel of basketball equipment, his eyes automatically scanning the court for optimal setup positions. "You seem to know what you're doing," remarked a young man working alongside him, setting up chairs along the sidelines. Jack offered a small smile but said little. He had become accustomed to invisibility during his years on the streets, and old habits die hard. Yet, as the morning progressed, he found himself making subtle suggestions. The scorer's table should be moved slightly to improve sightlines. The shooting stations for the youth clinic would work better with more space between them. Small observations from decades of experience that he couldn't quite suppress. The volunteer coordinator, Maria, began to notice. By mid-morning, she had quietly shifted Jack to help organize the basketball drills for the afternoon youth clinic. "We could use someone who understands the flow of these things," she said simply, without asking questions about his background. There was something in her eyes, though, a hint of recognition, perhaps, or just the wisdom of someone who had learned to see people for their abilities rather than their circumstances. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the drill sheets. How long had it been since he'd held a clipboard with purpose, since his input had mattered? The sensation was both foreign and achingly familiar. The simple gymnasium now felt transformed in Jack's eyes. The scuffed floors, the slightly crooked rims that had seemed so mundane when he entered, now took on the hallowed quality that basketball courts had always held for him. Spaces of possibility, arenas where young people could discover their potential. For a fleeting moment, he wasn't a homeless man volunteering for a free ticket. He was Coach Thompson again, preparing for practice. As lunchtime approached, Maria distributed sandwiches to the volunteers. Jack accepted his gratefully, finding a quiet corner to eat alone. The meal was simple but filling, and he couldn't help but notice it was the first food he'd eaten in months that hadn't come from a charity serving line or been purchased with scrounged dollars. There was dignity in this small difference that brought unexpected emotion to his throat. The afternoon brought new volunteers and staff members as the event preparations intensified. Jack kept his head down, focusing on the tasks at hand, yet he couldn't help noticing the increasing buzz of excitement. Rumors spread that Magic might stop by early to check on the preparations, and Jack felt his heart rate quicken at the possibility. What would he say if they came face to face? Would Magic even recognize him after all these years, and with the toll that homelessness had taken on his appearance? Part of him hoped for reconnection, while another part dreaded the pity or awkwardness that might follow. Around 3 o'clock, the main doors opened, and a small entourage entered. Jack was across the gymnasium, organizing basketball racks, when the unmistakable figure of Magic Johnson walked in, surrounded by event coordinators and foundation staff. Even at a distance, Magic's presence was commanding. That same charisma Jack had recognized in a teenage player had only grown more refined with age and accomplishment. Jack froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. For a moment, he considered slipping out the side exit. But before he could move, Maria was calling him over. "I need someone who understands basketball to help explain the drill stations we've set up," she said, unaware of the complex history hanging in the air. "Would you mind?" The request left no graceful way to refuse. Jack followed her across the court, keeping his eyes fixed on the clipboard in his hands. The voices grew louder as they approached the group, and then suddenly, Magic's familiar laugh cut through the noise, a sound unchanged by the decades that had passed. "Mr. Johnson," Maria began, "this is Jack, one of our volunteers. He's been helping organize the drill stations for tomorrow and seems to really understand basketball fundamentals." Jack slowly raised his eyes, meeting Magic's gaze. There was a moment of confusion in the basketball legend's expression, then widening recognition, followed by genuine shock. "Coach Thompson?" Magic said, his voice hushed with disbelief. The gymnasium seemed to fall silent around them, though in reality, the bustling activity continued unabated. For Jack, time suspended as he stood face to face with the living embodiment of his greatest professional achievement and most poignant reminder of how far he had fallen. "Hello, Irvin," Jack managed, using Magic's given name as he had during those early coaching days. Without hesitation, Magic stepped forward and embraced him. The gesture was so unexpected, so genuine, that Jack stood rigid with surprise before awkwardly returning the hug. When they separated, Magic kept a hand on his shoulder, as if afraid Jack might disappear if he fully let go. "Man, I've been looking for you for years," Magic said, his expression a complex mixture of joy and concern. "You just dropped off the map. Nobody could tell me where you went." The statement hit Jack like a physical blow. The idea that Magic Johnson, with his empire of businesses and philanthropic work, his celebrity status and demanding schedule, had been actively looking for him, it seemed impossible to reconcile with the reality of his invisible existence. "I've been around," Jack said inadequately, acutely aware of the curious stares from those nearby. His worn clothing and weathered appearance told a story he wasn't ready to share in this public setting. Something in Magic's eyes suggested he understood more than Jack was saying. With the same court awareness that had made him a legendary player, Magic seamlessly shifted the moment away from potential awkwardness. "We need to catch up," he said, casually draping an arm around Jack's shoulders and guiding him toward a quieter corner of the gym. "Maria, can I borrow your basketball expert for a few minutes? I want to review these drills personally." As they moved away from the group, Jack felt a surreal lightness. For years, he had carried the weight of failure and shame, carefully avoiding anyone who had known him in his previous life. Now, in an instant, the facade had cracked. Magic Johnson, of all people, had seen him in his reduced circumstances. Yet the expected humiliation didn't come. Instead, as they reached a quiet spot by the bleachers, Magic's expression held nothing but genuine concern and respect. "Coach," Magic said quietly, "whatever's happened, whatever you're going through, It doesn't change who you are to me. The simple statement, delivered without pity or judgment, penetrated defenses that Jack had maintained for years. He looked away, blinking rapidly against unexpected moisture in his eyes. "A lot has happened, Irvin," he said finally. "Not all of it good." Magic nodded, his expression serious. "I can see that, and I want to hear about it. All of it. But not here, not now." He glanced at his watch. "I've got to finish this walkthrough and head to another commitment, but I'll be back first thing tomorrow for the event." He pulled out his phone, typed quickly, and then looked back at Jack. "My assistant just texted you an address. It's a hotel a few blocks from here. There's a room reserved in your name. I want you to stay there tonight, get some rest, maybe clean up a bit. Tomorrow after the event, we'll talk. Really talk." Jack started to protest, his pride still a powerful force despite years of hardship, but Magic cut him off with a gesture. "This isn't charity, Coach. This is respect. You showed up for me when I was nobody. Let me show up for you now." The simple truth of those words silenced any objection Jack might have made. As Magic was called back to his entourage, he gave Jack's shoulder a final squeeze. "Tomorrow," he said firmly. "Don't disappear on me again." As Magic walked away, Jack stood motionless, the hotel information clutched in his hand. For the first time in years, someone had seen past his circumstances to the man he used to be, the man he perhaps still was, beneath the layers of hardship and survival. In that moment, standing alone in the corner of a community center gymnasium, Jack Thompson felt the first fragile stirrings of something he had thought long extinguished: hope. The hotel lobby gleamed with polished marble and soft lighting, a world away from the concrete underpass Jack had called home. He hesitated at the entrance, acutely aware of his worn clothing and the small bag containing his meager possessions. The doorman's eyes flickered over him briefly before professionally masking any judgment. Jack had become expert at reading these subtle reactions, the quick assessments people made when they encountered someone who didn't belong. "I believe I have a reservation," Jack said quietly at the front desk, under Thompson. The receptionist's fingers tapped efficiently across her keyboard. "Yes, Mr. Thompson. We have you in a suite on the 12th floor." She smiled professionally as she handed him a key card. "Your stay has been completely taken care of, including all amenities. Is there anything else you need?" Jack shook his head, still processing the reality of this sudden change in circumstances. Just that morning, he had woken up beneath a bridge, his joints stiff from the cold concrete. Now he was being directed to a luxury suite, courtesy of a man he had coached decades ago. The elevator ride was a solitary journey of reflection. Jack studied his weathered face in the mirrored walls, seeing both the man he had become and shadows of who he once was. The doors opened to a plush corridor, and he made his way to his room with the strange sensation that he was walking between worlds. The suite was expansive, tastefully decorated in muted tones. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of Los Angeles, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk approached. For several minutes, Jack simply stood in the center of the room, overwhelmed by the space, the quiet, the safety. He moved slowly to the bathroom, almost reverently. The large mirror revealed the full impact of his years on the street, the deep creases around his eyes, the untrimmed gray beard, the weariness etched into every feature. Jack turned on the shower, adjusting the temperature with hands that had forgotten such simple luxuries. As steam filled the room, he carefully removed his layered clothing, folding each item despite their worn condition. The hot water was transformative. Jack closed his eyes as it cascaded over him, washing away not just the physical grime of homelessness, but something deeper, a layer of resignation that had settled over him during his years of survival. He used the hotel soap liberally, watching as the suds swirled down the drain, carrying with them the tangible evidence of his life on the streets. Clean and wrapped in a hotel bathrobe, Jack discovered that a set of new clothes had been delivered to the room, simple but quality items in approximately his size. A note on hotel stationery read simply, "Thought you might appreciate these. See you tomorrow. Irvin." The gesture brought unexpected emotion to Jack's throat. It wasn't just the material provision, but the thoughtfulness behind it. Magic had anticipated his needs without making him ask, preserving his dignity in the process. Jack dressed in the fresh clothes, then ordered a simple meal from room service, his first restaurant meal in years. As he waited, he stood by the window, gazing out at the sprawling city below. Somewhere out there was the bridge he had slept under just last night. Somewhere were the other homeless men and women he had come to know through shared hardship, people with their own stories of how life had taken unexpected turns. When the food arrived, Jack sat at the elegant desk to eat, savoring each bite with the mindfulness that comes from having known true hunger. The television remained off. The silence was too precious to disrupt with noise. This moment of respite, this pause in the grinding difficulty of his existence, demanded to be fully experienced. After eating, Jack found himself drawn to the desk again. A notepad and pen sat neatly arranged, and almost without conscious decision, he began to write. The words came haltingly at first, then with increasing fluidity. His story, his journey from respected coach to homeless man, the cascade of events and decisions that had led him to the streets. He wrote about the promising coaching career that had gradually unraveled after his time with Magic, about the drinking that began as a social habit and evolved into dependency, about the failed marriage, the estrangement from his daughter, the medical bills from his heart surgery that depleted his savings, about the foreclosure on his modest home and the friends whose hospitality he had eventually exhausted. Jack wrote without self-pity, with the clear-eyed assessment of a coach analyzing game footage. He documented his own mistakes alongside the circumstances beyond his control, the personal failings, and the systemic challenges that had combined to leave him homeless at 63 years old. Pages filled as the night deepened. Jack wrote about life on the streets, the daily search for food and safe places to sleep, the invisibility he had experienced as people hurried past with averted eyes, the community he had found among others in similar circumstances. He wrote about the small dignities he had fought to maintain, staying clean, keeping his clothes mended, visiting the library to read and remember that his mind was still sharp despite his circumstances. Around midnight, Jack set down the pen, his hand cramped from the unaccustomed activity. He gathered the pages, reading through what he had written with the critical eye of someone who had spent years analyzing performances. The narrative was raw, honest, painful, but also strangely liberating. For so long, he had carried these experiences silently, shame preventing him from acknowledging the full truth of his situation, even to himself. Jack placed the pages on the nightstand and moved to the king-sized bed, another luxury that felt almost disorienting after years of sleeping on concrete, in shelters, or on the occasional friend's couch. He lay atop the plush comforter, staring at the ceiling, thoughts of tomorrow's reunion with Magic mingling with memories of their shared past. He remembered Magic as a young player, extraordinarily talented, but still developing, still learning the nuances of the game. Jack had been one of several coaches working with him during a crucial developmental period, helping to polish the basketball intelligence that would eventually make Magic legendary. Those had been good years, years when Jack had felt the satisfaction of contributing to something larger than himself, of helping shape potential into greatness. What would tomorrow bring? Jack wondered as sleep began to claim him. Magic had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations, not just as a basketball player, but as a businessman, philanthropist, and cultural icon. The contrast between their life trajectories couldn't be more stark. Yet something in Magic's reaction today, the genuine warmth of his recognition, suggested that he didn't see their reunion through that lens of comparison. As Jack drifted toward sleep, more comfortable than he had been in years, a thought surfaced with unexpected clarity. Perhaps this chance meeting wasn't just about the potential help Magic might offer him. Perhaps there was something still valuable in what Jack could offer as well. His experience, his knowledge, his understanding of both success and profound failure. For the first time in years, Jack Thompson fell asleep, not with the vigilant half-consciousness of someone vulnerable on the streets, but with the deep surrender of true rest. And as he slept, the pages of his story lay nearby, a testament to a life that had known both remarkable heights and devastating lows, a life that, perhaps, was not yet finished writing its most important chapters. In the darkness of that hotel room, As the city continued its ceaseless rhythm below, something was quietly being restored in Jack Thompson. Not just his dignity or his hope, but his belief that his story still mattered, that his journey still had purpose, and that tomorrow might hold possibilities he had long since stopped allowing himself to imagine. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains, gently waking Jack from the deepest sleep he'd experienced in years. For a moment, he lay disoriented, the soft mattress and clean sheets foreign to his body after so long sleeping rough. Then yesterday's events came flooding back, the chance volunteer opportunity, the unexpected reunion with Magic, this temporary sanctuary from the streets. Jack showered again, savoring the simple luxury before dressing in the clothes Magic had provided. The face that greeted him in the mirror was transformed, not just by cleanliness and rest, but by something less tangible. A spark had returned to his eyes, a slight straightening of his shoulders. Small changes, perhaps invisible to others, but to Jack, they represented a profound shift in his interior landscape. He gathered the pages he had written the night before, folding them carefully into his pocket. Whether he would share them with Magic or anyone else, he wasn't yet certain. But the act of documenting his journey had been its own kind of liberation. The community center was already bustling when Jack arrived. Children filled the gymnasium, their excitement palpable as they participated in basketball drills under the guidance of volunteer coaches. Parents lined the edges of the court, many with phones raised to capture moments of their children's joy. The atmosphere was electric with possibility, exactly what basketball had always represented to Jack during his coaching years. Maria spotted him immediately, her smile widening with recognition. "There you are. We were hoping you'd come back today. You're our basketball expert, remember?" The simple acknowledgement of his expertise, something that had once defined his identity, sent a surge of emotion through Jack. He nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in his throat. "Magic isn't here yet," Maria continued, misinterpreting his reaction, "but he asked that you help oversee the advanced skills station until he arrives." Just like that, Jack Thompson found himself back in a role he had thought lost forever. Coach, mentor, teacher. He moved among young players, offering quiet guidance on shooting form, defensive stance, passing technique. The familiar rhythm of instruction came back to him naturally, muscle memory of a different sort. Time dissolved as Jack immersed himself in the work. Each child's small improvement, each moment of understanding, blooming across a young face when a technique finally clicked. These were the rewards that had always meant more to him than any paycheck or recognition. For those hours, Jack wasn't a homeless man being given charity. He was Coach Thompson again, making a tangible difference in young lives. He was demonstrating the proper follow-through on a jump shot when a ripple of excitement moved through the gymnasium. Magic had arrived, his commanding presence immediately drawing all eyes. Jack continued his instruction, finishing with the young player before straightening to meet Magic's gaze across the court. Magic's smile was genuine as he made his way through the crowd, stopping to interact with children and parents, but moving with clear purpose toward Jack. When he reached him, Magic clasped his hand warmly. "You look good, Coach," he said, his eyes taking in the transformation. "How was the hotel?" "Better than the bridge," Jack replied with unexpected humor, surprising himself. Magic's expression sobered slightly. "We need to talk about that, but first," he gestured to the court around them, "I'd like you to help me run this clinic, like old times." What followed was extraordinary. Magic Johnson and Jack Thompson working side by side, demonstrating drills, sharing coaching duties, finishing each other's sentences as they explained basketball fundamentals. To the children and parents watching, it might have seemed like a planned part of the event. To Jack, it was nothing short of miraculous, a temporary return to the life he had lost, a reminder of his capabilities that remained intact despite years of hardship. As the clinic portion of the event concluded, Magic took the microphone to address the crowd. He spoke eloquently about the Foundation's mission to provide sporting opportunities to underprivileged youth, about the importance of mentorship, about basketball as a vehicle for learning life skills beyond the court. Then, to Jack's surprise, Magic gestured for him to join him at center court. "I want to introduce someone special," Magic said, his arm around Jack's shoulders. "This is Coach Jack Thompson. Many years ago, before I became the player you know, Coach Thompson was one of the most important influences in my development. He saw potential in me that I didn't yet see in myself. Jack stood frozen, aware of hundreds of eyes upon him as Magic continued. What Coach Thompson taught me wasn't just about basketball. He taught me about perseverance, about seeing beyond limitations, about the power of belief. Those lessons helped shape not just my athletic career, but my approach to business, to philanthropy, to life. Magic turned slightly to face Jack directly. His next words clearly meant as much for his former coach as for the audience. Great coaches don't just build athletes, they build character. They don't just teach skills, they nurture potential. Jack Thompson helped me become who I am today, and I've never forgotten that gift. The crowd applauded warmly, unaware of the deeper currents running beneath this public reunion. Jack stood tall under their attention, decades of coaching instinct helping him maintain composure despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. As the event transitioned to its closing activities, Magic guided Jack toward a private office off the main gymnasium. Once the door closed behind them, the public persona fell away, leaving two men with a shared history and vastly different presence. "I meant every word out there," Magic said, settling into a chair across from Jack. "You were important to me, which is why it kills me to see what's happened." Jack reached into his pocket, retrieving the folded pages from the hotel. "I wrote this last night," he said simply, placing them on the table between them. "It explains everything." As Magic read, his expression shifted through concern, surprise, and finally a deep, thoughtful understanding. Jack sat silently, allowing his written words to fill in the years that had separated them, to bridge the vast gulf between their circumstances. When Magic finished reading, he looked up with eyes that held not pity, but respect. "You've been through hell, Coach." Jack nodded. "My own choices led me there, at least partly." "Maybe," Magic acknowledged, "but that doesn't mean you have to stay there." He leaned forward, his intensity reminiscent of the focused young player Jack had once coached. "I have a proposition for you." The foundation, Magic explained, was expanding its youth basketball programs across Los Angeles. They needed someone with genuine coaching experience to help develop curriculum, train volunteer coaches, ensure the programs delivered real value beyond just recreation. "I need someone who understands basketball fundamentally, but who also understands life's challenges," Magic said. "Someone who can connect with kids who are facing obstacles, who need more than just sports skills." Jack listened, scarcely breathing as Magic outlined the position. A real job with salary, benefits, an apartment provided during the initial transition period. Not charity, but opportunity. Not a handout, but a hand up. "Why?" Jack asked finally, the question encompassing all his doubts about worthiness, about second chances at his age, about Magic's motivations. Magic's answer was simple. "Because what you gave me was never just about basketball, because I believe you still have more to give, and because sometimes life offers us chances to come full circle, to help someone who once helped us." In that quiet office, as the sounds of the basketball event continued beyond the door, Jack Thompson faced the most important decision of his recent life. The pages of his story lay on the table between them, a record of failure, struggle, and survival, but perhaps not the final chapter. "Yes," he said finally, his voice steady with newfound purpose. "I accept." The two men shook hands, the gesture bridging decades, circumstances, and life trajectories. In that moment, something profound was exchanged, not just opportunity or gratitude, but a mutual recognition of human value that transcended success or failure, wealth or poverty. Jack Thompson walked out of that community center, not back to the streets, but toward a future he could not have imagined just 24 hours earlier. His journey from NBA-adjacent success to homelessness had been long and painful. His journey back would require courage, determination, and humility. But as Magic's car took him to what would become his new temporary home, Jack felt something settling in his chest, the weight of possibility replacing the burden of mere survival. Sometimes, life's most important lessons come through our greatest struggles. Sometimes our deepest falls prepare us to help others rise. And sometimes, when we least expect it, we are offered the chance to reclaim not just our circumstances, but our purpose. Stories like Jack's happen every day around us, though most don't end with a chance reunion with someone like Magic Johnson. The truth is, many former coaches, teachers, and mentors fall on hard times, becoming invisible to the very communities they once served. If Jack's story moved you today, remember that homelessness can happen to anyone, even those who once touched our lives in profound ways. Everyone has a story, and everyone deserves a second chance. Have you ever reconnected with someone who made a difference in your life? Or have you witnessed an act of kindness that changed someone's path? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of redemption and second chances. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Remember, sometimes the most meaningful thing we can offer another person isn't just financial help, but the restoration of their dignity and purpose. Look around your community today. Who might need that kind of recognition? Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember that it's never too late for a new chapter.